Hi everybody, it's Joe Cioffi here on this Monday, and we are going to start to see some changes this week. For the first time this autumn in the East, autumn actually arrives. I mean, we've had the odd day or two with shots of cool air coming down, but they really didn't even amount to much. In some cases, it only took us from being much above normal to just a little bit above normal. Well, now we're seeing that the pattern has indeed changed and certainly shifted enough that we are going to see some colder air to take temperatures actually below average, and by the end of the week it's going to feel like winter time across much of the eastern part of the U.S. and in the mid-Atlantic states. I want to start off though by going out to the west, because the satellite in the west is pretty impressive. If you take a look at this big swirl in the Gulf of Alaska that's dropping southeastward, this is another storm center that's going to be dropping southeast and then eventually making its way to the Washington coast in a weaker version of it, but it might still pack a punch as it approaches. So this is going to bring some more rain, some more rain for the coast, and snows for the inland parts of the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Rockies over the next 5+ days. And in the meantime, when we jump to the east, and we'll take a look at that, we had yesterday's round of severe weather that occurred in the Ohio Valley. They even had a tornado warning for Cleveland late yesterday afternoon. Well, you know what, right on schedule with these things. When they get to the certainly when they get to my area, they seem to fall apart, and we've had a few showers, but it really wasn't much of a big deal. But you can see the clouds go all the way back down into the Tennessee and middle Mississippi Valley. And there's probably going to be a wave on that front that's going to bring another area of rain to the northern mid-Atlantic and maybe to about New York City, the lower Hudson Valley, and southern Connecticut tomorrow night into early Wednesday. The more important thing about that wave is that as that goes by, and then a second wave goes by Wednesday night, which will pass by a little further south, that second one is going to really start to bring in the colder air into the east for the end of the week and the start of the weekend. So it's a very interesting pattern here setting up. We're only in the beginning of November, folks, so this is what's supposed to happen, where you get these shots that start to come down. They don't last more than a day or two, and then naturally temperatures try to moderate back toward average. You can see the showers on the radar this evening across most of New England. Then there's a break, and then there's some more showers and a couple of thunderstorms once you get south of the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. So for some reason, there's a boilerplate over my area, eastern PA, to Long Island and parts of southeastern New York and southernmost southern New England. Although there are some, there are still some showers that we did see some move through. They just didn't amount to much. So why don't we take a look at the GFS, the new GFS, because most of it is actually out now, given that we are now on standard time. It's wonderful because everything is out an hour early, and we can see most of the run when I do the live stream and not have to kind of go back and forth with it. So we'll have the full U.S. view here. Don't see any major storms except whatever comes into the northwest, and you're seeing the map for this evening and the first part of tonight with the cold front offshore and this high in Montana that's kind of sprawling out into the east. This is the first shot of cool air or chilly air, and there's that first wave by later tomorrow. Let me just so I can see the time better. This is for tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. There's that first wave, and you can see how the northern edge of that, there's actually a little stripe of wet snow on the northern edge of that in Pennsylvania and up into northeastern PA. Very, very light, and some models have a little bit more, some less, but I mean, if a couple of wet snowflakes mix in the higher elevations, don't be surprised. And in the meantime, by the way, out in the west, you've got that system that I just showed you on the satellite dropping southeastward off the coast of Oregon by Wednesday afternoon. Some showers across Texas into Louisiana, And now you've got a high that's sitting north of Montana. That is the core of this cold air mass. And if you look here for Thursday evening, there's an Arctic, well, let's call it a polar boundary, moving into upstate New York, and some lake effect snows being indicated here, and maybe some snow squalls. So there might be a little bit of snow action up in the snow belts with this. Out in the west, that coastal storm off the west coast brings in some rain and some snow into the northern Rockies. Here comes the cold push. Now, for the east, when you have a high like this that's up this far north in northern Lake Superior, if you look at the isobars, they run from basically from James Bay almost straight south into North Carolina. This is how we can get, if we had something like this in the dead of winter, it would produce temperatures well below zero in areas not too far from New York City and northward, and maybe even into New York City and northern New Jersey in a situation like this. The Hudson Valley wind is really how we see some of the coldest air, so we're going to have that. Even though the conditions aloft, when we look at where the jet stream is, they aren't especially cold. The low levels here will get very cold. So I'm thinking by Saturday morning, we're going to see teens and 20s over a large portion of the Northeast down into the northern mid-Atlantic with a high like this. The core of that cold air, of course, is going to be up in northern New England. Now, as we move through the weekend and into early next week, there will be a system coming out of the plains, and it's going to probably be weak and attempt to redevelop off the Delaware coast. So there'll be some rain with that, and maybe even a little bit of wet snow in the colder areas well inland, but nothing that amounts to much. Remember, this is the same GFS, by the way, that had a wrapped up nor'easter yesterday just south of Long Island, but it appears that the upper air is not going to be favorable for that. Not a surprise. Models have done that a few times recently. Out in the west, another system comes in early next week with some significant rain and snow into northern and central California and on up again into the northern Rockies, although the atmosphere is a bit warmer here, so you do have more rain than snow even in some of the interior areas. And going further, the next high into the east, it looks like we'll probably have seasonal temperatures, maybe a little bit above normal until another cold front comes through. But again, we don't see any evidence here through the next 10 days of any big storms on the horizon. Let me see how far out we have of the GFS at the moment. So just again, now we're in days 11 and 12, so you know how squirrely it gets. But you know, there are going to be a couple of cold fronts and shots of cold air and moderation in between. So I think really what this is let's call it the great normalization of the pattern. We don't have, it seems like we're not going to have any kind of big ridge in the eastern part of the United States. And as we load up the upper air, I jumped, by the way, already to day 16, which actually looks fairly cold. But I'll back up and we'll start from the beginning. So, you know, here's, you know, you can see the flow from Canada setting up for Tuesday, and you've got this shortwave trough back in the plains. You've got a deep low sitting off the west coast in the upper atmosphere. The flow is split, so you've got a flow coming out of Canada. You got a flow coming in from off the Pacific. You know, you get a split flow in the winter, in the dead of winter, that sometimes can be pretty dangerous as far as the snow is concerned. But it's too early here. And you see what happens with this trough in the east as it swings around. It's a quick shot, and that other system comes into the west. That system then lifts out, and while we do see a little bit of ridging in the east, it's very flat. There's another weak trough. This is for Sunday night into Monday that swings on through. Cold air sort of pulls up into Canada at this point. And my own feeling on this, when we look at the upper air, say beyond days 7 and 8 and go really into the long range, it seems to me like it's morphing into something, and it's not quite sure which way it wants to go. So I think we're going to continue to see weather models change quite a bit going forward with regards to the longer term pattern. I don't know where we're going to wind up with all this in the end, but we are certainly going to enjoy the ride, for sure. Now, I'll quickly show you what's happening in Europe, as we have a rather impressive little low that's sitting in the Mediterranean Sea, producing rains across Italy and some heavy rains in spots. It's snows up in the Alps. System approaching the British Isles, going forward. That low in the Mediterranean weakens. So does the front moving through the British Isles, and carrying us through this week and into the weekend. A couple of systems come in to northwestern Europe and the UK, getting another low in the Mediterranean Sea with more rain for parts of Italy and around the Adriatic. Doesn't seem like we have any big storms. It does look like at least around day 6 and 7 there's a considerable amount of snow that is forecast for the higher elevations along the Adriatic, and certainly for the Italian and Swiss Alps. That's a pretty deep low that it has. That is a very deep low that the model develops in the Mediterranean Sea here around day 7. It's a 983 pressure. That's a strong system. Then it gradually weakens, of course, but it looks like that's going to have some impact. And no big storms. There's a big Atlantic low here on day 11 that goes well to the north of Scotland. Does bring in some rain, probably with the front that sweeps in from off the ocean, but not seeing anything too problematic. Now for our friends in the Canadian Maritimes, let's take a look at what you can expect. And remember, yesterday we saw the models with the GFS in particular, with this nor'easter that's just is not going to happen. But we do have a gradual cool down. Those waves that move off the coast, they pass to the south, and then we have a stronger front that sweeps in Friday night and Saturday, and you get a nice little low that develops just northwest of Newfoundland and southeast Labrador with some snow, and then that pulls out, and then we get the next low producing some rain over parts of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland as we head towards day 9 and 10. But it doesn't look like there's any, big storms on the horizon here. We'll look at the 10-day snowfall. Here's the 10-day snowfall for southeastern Canada. It's a little bit less than what the models were showing yesterday with regards to what it showed over Newfoundland, but still ample snows for Labrador, and that part of southeastern Canada doing very well. And since I didn't show it to you for Europe, we can go back to Europe and show you Europe's 10-day snowfall. And you can see the concentration. This is not snow cover. This is actual what the model is forecasting for snow. You can see the concentration across the Alps, back over through parts of southern France, and along and inland of the Adriatic, and then on up and through parts of Eastern Europe, and then, of course, on up through Norway, Sweden, Finland, and so on, and even some snow for the highlands in northern Scotland. And with respect to the U.S., we'll show you the snow cover there. So here's, in the east, you've got this being produced by this polar front that comes through on Thursday. So that produces, a couple of inches in some places. I would think some of that's going to be elevation driven to some degree, but nothing exceptional throughout much of the east. Maybe a little bit more in the northern lakes over the next 10 days. The UP of Michigan, northern Wisconsin, and then a peppering of snow across the northern plains, and then you've got more significant snows up through the northern Rockies and the inland areas of the Pacific Northwest. So no major storms, as I said, on the horizon here. We're looking pretty good from that respect, at least for now. The European model is a little bit different than the GFS in that it wants to take this next high out slower, and has some kind of a wave for Monday night, Tuesday, passing off the Carolinas. It doesn't really develop very much or lift too far to the north, so I don't know how much we're really going to see out of that, but it'll be interesting to watch in terms of how it all evolves. So I see a lot of you folks are on, and yeah, ice fishing soon. Well, let it freeze first. Whoever said that, I'm sorry, I lost you. So a big collective hello to everybody, from Corey to James NASCAR to Dio, Golden Twister, Killer of the Sun, Cynthia Guignautis, Hosea, Leon, Delvin, and if I missed you, you're all here, and I'm glad to see you. Taco Bell is here. It's great to see all of you on board tonight. again, vicious rumors for Brandon Plantier with regards to the first snow in North Jersey. You know what? If tomorrow night a wet snowflake or two mixes in, I wouldn't be too shocked. Okay, but I wouldn't hold my breath on it either. Dave Fuller, still good till Friday. You know what, Dave? Pull him in Thursday night, okay? Because it's going to fall into the 30s Friday and settle there. So I'm thinking you might want to take him in. We are going to have a freeze here for Friday morning, no question. And that freeze, by the way, is going to extend all the way down into the mid-Atlantic states and maybe even down into North Carolina. So the low levels with this big high will be impressive as far as the cold shot is concerned. You look at it aloft and kind of say, oh, okay, it's not too bad. But it's the bottom part of the atmosphere that's going to wind up being especially cold out of this. Thank you, Karen Steed. I really appreciate you being here. I love doing these weather videos, and I'm glad you are enjoying it. Okay, I saw that was Sean with the ice fishing soon. Yeah, we got to get it to freeze first. You know, you're not going to get, by the way, you're not going to see persistent cold this time of year lasting long enough to produce anything other than, you know, the quick day or two surprise. And I'm talking about my area of the Northeast. You start, of course, along the Canadian border. You know, that's a bit of a different story, but the pattern overall to me does not look like persistent cold. I think it's going to be one where we're going to have shots of cold air and it moderates in between, and some of these cold air masses are going to be colder than others. So, but the overall trend, again, in my opinion, is the fact that we're going to see something that resembles normalcy around here, and not you know, that ridge in the east sitting around for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. So let's see how this all goes. I'm going to be very curious to see where we are in a couple of weeks. You know, some of the longer range models, by the way, have been, you know, they're kind of still showing things warming back up. But as I pointed out yesterday, when we get a transition to a new pattern like this, oftentimes it takes the long-range models a little while to play catch-up because they like to use persistence as a big part of their equation, and as a result, it keeps saying the same thing, and then all of a sudden you'll wake up one morning and you see something different. And I think this all really got started with that big storm that we had back a few weeks ago. Okay, so let's leave it here, folks. Hope everybody had a great Monday. We will be back tomorrow, probably at around the same time. And in the meantime, we'll just keep an eye on things. You can head over to the website. I'll do a live Facebook cast probably tonight after 9 o'clock. So if you're on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, you can take a look at that. Also, I've been hawking some of my wares. If you want a Joe Stradamus shower curtain, if you really have to have one, and along with other things, including I put up some phone cases and a few other things. You can check out all of this in the Joe Stradamus store and take a look. The shower curtain got a lot of laughs. That's kind of what I thought. You know, you have, I don't know if you guys, I saw I back when I went fishing upstate about 5 weeks ago, and I have that picture of me with that I took with the salmon I caught. So I designed this gigantic shower curtain, and when it's hanging, you can if you're taking a shower and you come out of the shower and you're drying yourself and you see this big shower curtain with a big image of me holding this gigantic salmon looking right at you, it's got to be a little bit disconcerting, but it is pretty funny. So if you haven't seen it, you can see it on my Facebook page, or you can go to the link. And hey, Christmas is coming, so maybe the weather geek in your life might want a Joe Stradamus mug, or a notebook, or a phone case, or any one of a bunch of other things, or a blanket, or maybe he would like the shower curtain. So check that out. And in the meantime, we will see you tomorrow. Again, have a great evening, be safe, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.